Company of Heroes 3 is an RTS strategy game with 4 distinct factions, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. And today we'll be going over the best AT guns in all of Company of Heroes 3. With me today is not 117, as he is currently trapped in the hell that is his job. And with me instead is the always awesome and reliable Jonny.
Hello.
Yes, he and I shall be going over the best AT guns in the game. Every AT gun over every faction, even some questionably labeled AT guns, as you'll probably very quickly notice. But first and foremost, let's dive into the 6-pounder, aka the AT gun for the British. You can get out of the platoon command post, which is amazing in regards to being able to get it early to counter like 8 rads and such. And it's not a building you're going to skip over, so you're going to have access to this most of the time. It's also not too expensive at 280 manpower. So for me, this is like an easy A tier. What are your thoughts, Jonny?
Yeah, it's the most accessible anti-tank gun for the Allies, since it requires no additional tech cost, like the USF, who usually like to skip buildings. It also is more accessible than DAC's PAC-38, since the PAC-38, either you have to get it with the mechanized column, or you have to tech for fire support elements in the building for it.
Yep.
Overall, too, it has some of the best performance for an anti-tank gun without spending any munitions on it. So if you just sit there and let it go to work, it performs very well.
Yep, very true. And yeah, you'd say A rank?
A rank, definitely.
I think there's a clear S rank we'll get to later on, but at least for A, at least in regards to, you'd be crazy to go without. Definitely, the 6-pounder is just great all around. The next is the Flak 30. Now this thing is kind of labeled as anti-tank and anti-air. As is the Flak 36. But unlike the Flak 36, this thing is an autocannon. It's mostly potent against light vehicles, like, I assume like a Jeep or something, maybe a Weasel at most, but you're not going to use this thing, like, ever against a Sherman. You'd be suicidal to have, like, a bunch of these against a Sherman.
Yeah, the only upside is the fact that it can shoot at infantry, but, like, it feels, I don't know if the stats are different on it from the Flak emplacement itself, but it just doesn't feel the same as the old emplacement rush. I know they haven't changed the stats on them besides the build cost for it. It just doesn't feel the same. And, like, the biggest thing I've seen it kill was a Greyhound. I have not seen it be used against anything larger with any success.
Oh god, no. Yeah, I've charged through this thing's, like, fire with my Sherman or, a Grant. It doesn't do anything to heavy or even medium armor. So it's early game deterrent, but like there are better things that can do that. But we'll get to that whenever we go into this other tier list. And for right now, I don't think it's trash. I think it has its place, but as an anti-tank gun, I'd say like a C, maybe a D.
Yeah, I'd say probably D tier. This is not, granted, this is not the place where it should be ranked, but since the game lists it as anti-tank, we are compelled to place it here on this tier list somewhere. So it is going in the D tier for anti-tank purposes.
Again, cool with the, Veteran C1 upgrade, cool with, like, suppressing fire and stuff, but, like, yeah. Now we get what is probably, definitely, easily the S tier. Flak 36. I mean, knock out planes, it can knock out tanks in just, like, a few shots. I think this thing can kill a Sherman in 2 or 3 shots, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I'm pretty sure it's 3 hits, yeah.
Yeah, it's a monster on the field, and I can't think of anything minus the British equivalent with the 17-pounder being able to rival it.
Yeah, it's easily accessible too. As expensive as DAC's tier 3 building is, where you get your heavier armor for DAC, it requires no extra tech cost to get. But you can just build this thing the moment you get that building. It's provided you have the fuel cost for it. But it also, once again, yeah, it has its 360-degree arc of fire, so you don't have to worry about resetting it to face somewhere. It will automatically turn no matter what towards its target. And it can also deal with planes, so secondary purpose, which is nice about it.
Yeah, it's the best thing. I mean, you obviously want infantry guarding this thing. You don't want to overrun and take it, but like, as long as you have a bit of a wall between it and the armor that's coming at you, it will chew up and spit out mostly anything, even the heaviest armor like a Churchill. So yeah, easy S tier, I think. You agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So now for the next one, which I think is one that I think it's good, but I think the faction it's in is bad. In which case, the 57mm gun. Do you want to explain why?
It's similar to its Company of Heroes 2 stats compared to the 6-pounder, where technically they are the same gun. Historically, they are the exact same gun minus a muzzle brake on the American version. However, the stats are very different, where without spending any resources, it's kind of worse than the other anti-tank guns. Plus, since it's a USF, and of course it has to be in a really annoying building where it's in your motor pool instead of your tank depot. Meaning that you can either get your motor pool to get your anti-tank gun, or you can wait for tanks, but if you don't wait for tanks, then you'll be late on your armor, and that's just one of the reasons on USF. But either way, it's in a really annoying tech position, which makes it quite awful, but in general, its abilities are actually great. Similar to its Company of Heroes 2 counterpart, it gets access to a armor-piercing round ability, which increases damage and penetration on the gun temporarily for munitions cost. In addition to that, it has 2 very good veterancy abilities, sticking in line with other USF units. It can choose between either veterancy ability once it hits veterancy 1, with the veterancy abilities being either a focus sight, which reduces your firing arc and peripheral vision, but increases your sight forward, or a brace ability, which is powerful enough to let it survive a Wehrmacht mechanized zeroing artillery barrage, which is really, really powerful if you need to keep that thing on the front without it dying to get the final shot off on armor. But granted, so is the focus sight, so you can pick and choose from 2 very powerful veterancy abilities.
Yeah, it's just a case of actually like getting it. And right now, the riflemen, or with riflemen being as weak as they are, and the nerfs that recently hit the American faction, it's a bright spot in a very dim, dim faction. So I would say probably A tier as well. Like, I think this is probably the best AT gun based on its stats. It's just, if this was in the British, it would be like broken, right? If it was with the British, there would be no reason to pick Americans.
If the Brits had access to the same abilities on the 6-pounder that the American AT gun had, they would be so, dealing with 8 rounds would be so much easier.
Yeah, I completely agree. This would nullify that in a heartbeat, but sadly it's trapped in the Americans, and therefore, even if it's at the best, it still has like such a drawback. Speaking of drawbacks, the next would be the Pack 38, which is undergun compared to the Pack 40, compared to the Wehrmacht equivalent, but it does have a special ability where you can pay 35 munitions and base at one and weaken enemy armor. So essentially that allows consecutive hits to do more damage. That's great, but you have to up tier to get it, because you have to get that, what is it, like a 45 fuel like tech upgrade.
Yeah, you need access to the fire support elements ability to get access to this the AT gun. On the upside, it does get an option to deploy with a mechanized half-track through DAC's global call-in ability. However, in my opinion, this anti-tank gun is just kind of an anti-tank gun. Most of the things you're going to be relying upon this anti-tank gun to deal with will not bounce the shots from it. If you're trying to use this thing to kill Matildas or Churchills, you're going to struggle, in which case that ability is fine on it for his veterancy, but like, you're Dax, so why not just go for a Martyr or, a Flak 88 instead of this thing to deal with it?
It's also just way more mobile in regards to getting the Martyr, because like, yeah, you don't pay anything and you just pay 25 fuel, Martyr, easy. Like,
yeah. The problem is it's overshadowed by other things Dak has. So, like, I understand if you need the early anti-tank, but once again, anything this thing can deal with, usually the Panzerjäger squad can deal with them much better while you're saving for other squads or other vehicles anyways. I'd put this in probably C tier.
Yeah, that was pretty much where I was thinking as well. It's got good abilities. It's just kind of like the Americans. It's just in a bad spot to be easily accessible. It's outside the beaten path, as it were.
Yeah, it's hard to access for what it is, and like, yeah, it's just you can spend your fuel on much better things than getting access to this half track or AT gun.
I'd agree with that. So, last but not least, I think right in the middle ground, it would probably be that Pack 40, because I mean, it has a good arc. It does have a camouflage event one, which is, it's something. But is there anything else you can think of that really kind of makes this thing, go with the British or fall into its stack brother?
It's just like it's a good anti-tank gun, but like it doesn't have the bonuses the Brit has. It's not as early. Its veterancy ability is pretty nice if you want to ambush something, but considering the way the hit points work in Company of Heroes 3, it's pretty hard to get like a KO2 style ambush where the vehicles are a lot more medium vehicles are a lot more fragile, or even against light vehicles, because this game has some pretty funky survivability mechanics going on. I'd say it's a solid B tier, just average. You're kind of average to above average anti-tank gun. nothing crazy about it, but it kind of fits Wehrmacht's theme of just like, you know, you have your standard units. There's nothing crazy about them aside from certain ones. Jaegers, cough, cough. Which, by the way, do kind of outperform the Pack 40. A Jaeger squad with a Shrek. Kind of unfortunate, but...
Hey, what can you do, right?
Exactly.
But, so I just moved up the 17-pounder. Would you say it's an easy S tier as well? Maybe not as good as the Pack 36, but, you know, still far better than everything else, you know, in this AT category?
It is the only other super heavy anti-tank gun we have access to in Company of Heroes 3, meaning that it cannot be towed, or it cannot be moved unless it is towed. However, it makes up for that in the incredible amounts of damage and penetration it has. And this, if you get one or two of these things, they can shred a Tiger very quickly. Because they have a good rate of fire, great damage, great pen, great range. Only downside with them, they have a very narrow firing arc, and you have to pick up and reposition, like, change the firing arc if you want to look at something else, in like the Flak 88.
No, I would agree in that. It's, you know, you lack the EA, it can't, like, the Flak 36 has omnidirectional fire, can fire in any direction, which is nice. It takes a second to get there, but it'll still move on its own accord. So yeah, there's definitely some drawbacks compared to its German, you know, counterpart, but it still outclasses anything else in regards to its abilities, its rate of fire, its damage output compared to every other AT gun on here. So yeah, I think a lower S tier is definitely where I'd see this thing, and definitely where it deserves to be.
One other thing too, it kind of suffers too because you have to specifically tech for it, another fuel cost in the British armor building, because of the fact that like you can choose an upgrade for $1,000, you can choose an upgrade for this anti-tank gun, which also kind of delays it, which is also a bit of a problem with that because it's costing extra fuel for it, which it's still worth it, but it will delay other vehicles. That's the thing.
Yeah, definitely pricier, and you're not getting as good of a variant, but for the British, which generally lack AT, like in regards to their, you know, tank destroyers, they don't have any. This thing is a very solid way to fill that void that they, you know, suffer from. But yeah, I think that's a solid list. Do you have any changes that you would say from this, or anything to keep in mind when it comes to these rankings, or?
Yeah, anti-tank guns have never been Company of Heroes 3's problem in the current iteration that it stands when we're making this video, so I don't think these will shift too much unless the Flak 36 gets a nerf, which in my opinion it doesn't need, but other than that, it's fine. The only thing I could possibly see is the USF AT gun. If it gets placed in a better position, or they fix USF tech, it probably could go up to low S tier. That
I could agree with as well. If the Americans can get an early AT gun, I think the meta would change so fast and so hard, it would. Yeah, I think that'd be an amazing change. You did have one honorable mention, Johnny. Do you want to say what it is and why?
The Jaeger squad for Wehrmacht with the Panzer Shrek. For some reason, it deals more damage than most tanks do, and it outperforms a bazooka squad. A singular Jaeger Shrek outperforms the entire bazooka team in terms of damage, penetration, fire rate, everything. Plus, they're also a combat squad.
So you're telling me the Americans suck at something else? This is very surprising.
What I'm telling you is that we have a Company of Heroes 2 released Volksgrenadiers. They're back.
Oh, God, I forgot how potent those suckers were.
They're back.
Until our next ranking series, I'm Greyshot151, accompanied by Jonny, and we will see you all next time. Until then, I'll catch y'all later.
Hello everyone, this is Greyshot151, and before y'all go, let me give a special shout out to Patreon supporters Joey G240, Milam, Big Cooch, Aphyria, Ace, Pyro Shark, Tony B 95, Epic Pleb. Thank you all for your incredible support and helping me grow my channel and support my channel and everything I do. Thank you, and to the rest of you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.